To Be Continued, a fanboy podcast. Please follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can also catch us on the various platforms such as iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, and our newly minted YouTube channel. That's To Be Continued, a fanboypodcast.com.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
I'm getting to that! Please remember to like and subscribe, and as always, a 5-star rating is appreciated. To Be Continued is an adult podcast for adults by adults. We may talk about superheroes, sci-fi, comic books, and all sorts of similar crap like that, but we may use adult and frank language when we do so. This is not a podcast for kids, brothers and sisters. Enjoy.
Welcome back. High five, Clark. High five.
High five.
Wow, that was awesome.
Apparently we've been taken over in the period of time that we've been off the air.
But this is a corporate takeover.
Corporate takeover.
A socially distant corporate takeover.
I have the majority of the shares.
This is To Be Continued, a fanboy podcast covering your fanboy passions. You're not going to learn anything, but if you stick around,
I'm going
you
to
might have some fun.
That's
We guarantee it.
This is our first show back officially since we ended up in a Will Smith film. As everyone knows, currently we are in a quarantine here in the United States of America and in many other countries around the world. But that doesn't mean that
We can't have some fun.
well, we can't have some fun. That doesn't mean that fanboyism goes completely into hibernation, and we'll get into why it kind of is in hibernation. I'm, as always, your host, Miguel A. Velez, our other host.
I'm Edward Ng here, along with my boy Clark. And over there is Jonathan Vergara.
That's me.
And hey, man, what happened to that fancy background that you've been...
No,
yeah.
you don't need it. Don't bring it up again. Moving on.
Thanks for reminding me.
So we are here to discuss this is really just an update on our lives, what's happening in the world, and then we'll talk a little bit about, how this affects the fanboy world. This has all been very, very, very shocking. And, we've been going back and forth with each other. We've been maintaining contact. John has been running Pancake Studios as best he could under these circumstances. You've still been doing some work remote, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's been challenging, but it's been fun. And it's actually a pretty good new workflow. Some of my clients actually like that they can see every little detail on my screen at the luxury of their home and their own computers. And so they're a little more intimate with the work, actually, because they see it better than they could when they were here behind my shoulder.
Do you think that this period might affect your line of work in some way, in the sense that maybe that might change? It might be, I'm not just saying more remote work, but it might be something you just pointed out. Maybe you'll have to set up some kind of screen for clients or whether people when they come into recording studios to see that. I doubt that your experience there is unique. So, that might be something that, ends up changing after this is, okay, we get back to semi-normalcy.
But I know you've been pretty busy, John. It's been actually way more difficult to get a hold of you than we usually
right.
have a hard time getting a hold of you, right?
I didn't know it was possible to get for it to be harder to get in touch with me. I didn't know.
And of course, our married unit here in the TBC world,
our nuclear family,
the Ings. Ed, how have you been holding up? I know you've been holding down the fort there. You've been cooking and
so we're
taking care of your son who's home.
We're going on week 5, right? Remote learning is in high gear. That's eating a lot of my time. I'm also, I've told Miguel this. I said, I am going to receive my Michelin star for home cooking. I really am. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I prepare for my for my family, and that means stretching out what you have because you don't want to keep going out to shop for groceries. And I've been doing that maybe once every 1.5 weeks. And here again, this is, by the way, for people who don't realize, I live in Borough Park. I'm on the border, on the DMZ between
Oh, don't use that term. Don't use that term.
Brooklyn, Chinatown, and where the Hasidic Borough Park is. I'm
Right, yes.
6 blocks away from Maimonides Hospital, which has the second most cases in all of New York. Okay, and we are at the epicenter of this global pandemic. But again, yes, I do expect to get my Michelin star in the mail at some point. My wife, who is an officer with a small business corporation, she's been trying to put out fires with what she's doing. And it's really weird because being an at-home dad, I don't go out as much. So it kind of feels like, while it's not a big change for me, it is weird that my day, as soon as I get up, I hit the floor running.
What are you talking about?
The things in life and how things have affected us because of the coronavirus, right?
It'd be interesting to get Clark's point of view on all this, actually.
We will, but that said, Miguel sent me a message the other day. It's like, hey, Kim Jong-un has brain damage. And I go, whoa, everyone, whoa. And I called him at his work, and I said, I did the whole Dave Chappelle, Ja Rule thing. It's like, okay, everybody, Ja Rule has comments that he wanted to make on MTV. Everybody
on 9/11.
Oh no! And first off, you're burying the better bit.
What's that?
You're burying the better bit.
Okay, what's that?
The better bit, the funnier thing that you said was, has anyone told the worm?
Well, I was getting to that. Oh.
That's what I
You
said.
killed the punchline.
Because you buried it, because you went with the lamer joke than with the one that was
Well, I
the
had to
killer.
put it in
You
context.
open with your killer. Don't
put
be
it in
like,
context.
oh, we'll work up to it. No, that's failure. That is failure on comedy writing. This is working up to it.
Calm down, everyone. Calm down. Has anyone told the worm?
So before we got, I don't even know how we went off into that section. Yeah, as Ed said, I am still working. This has been an observation I'm going to get to, but since my job is considered still essential, you still have to have maintenance and security, whatnot, for these buildings in all around apartments. My position at a hotel, I probably would have been laid off, but luckily for me, I'm in a position where I'm still needed. I'm still going in there at night, so I'm taking the trains to come in. As I told Ed,
You're with
when
the
you go-
Teamsters, right? Is that
no,
is
we're
that
not.
why you haven't got laid off?
No. Actually, we're not a union building, believe it or not. Now, as I've been telling Ed, I go into the night on the subway. I have to take either the R or the D, and at night, especially that section of Manhattan, I always say this: when we think about late 1930s comic books, detective comic books, that kind of stuff, Batman, or when you think of the original sort of run of Stan Lee on Spider-Man, with artists like Steve Ditko and Buscema and God, how come John Romita? John Romita. Was that? Yeah, that it's that kind of like lower Manhattan. That's not quite Midtown. It's not skyscrapers. It's tall buildings, but they're not that tall. A lot of water towers, shadowy, still cobblestones on the streets. And, when I have to walk from either Prince Street or Broadway Lafayette, I've told Ed, I said, I kind of feel like as I'm walking around, and it's only a few blocks, that I'm going to see Bruce Wayne's parents getting killed around every corner. That's kind of that is really, really the feel of it, especially in the city at night. And it is what it is. I don't want to piss and moan too much about it because, quite frankly, I'm one of how many other people that are doing it. We're all going through the same thing.
Yes.
We're all, adjusting to how this is going to affect us and our lives going forward. We're all going to have to be more cognizant. We're all going to have to really pay attention to good information and not bad information, which unfortunately, the way social media is, we are awash in a lot of bad information, and that's causing some issues. We're not going to tangent out into politics, but
the Kim Jong-un thing is a perfect example. Now, again, we don't know what's really going on.
Wait, so is this real news or fake news?
Well, like I said,
John, you're so busy you haven't heard.
Right?
No, I haven't heard.
He's okay. You look it up on your own. We're not going to discuss it, but it's
Did the deep state take him out?
No. Well, there's
really don't know what.
Yeah, we don't. But that leads me up to this other thing that I wanted to say is that, Miguel, you have your mother and your grandmother. They live out there in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
John, you have your grandmother and your uncle who live upstairs. My parents live 11 blocks away, and they're the ones that are true and nearest to us. And we want to keep them safe, and we want to be able to practice what's good practices, right? We don't want to be able, like I know, Miguel, you want so bad to go and.
Well, yeah, I'm in the position like a lot of people are, where personal story. I have my personal feeling is I do think I caught this, perhaps late last year or early. I'm forgetting the exact time, but I know it was around after Christmas, and I had something that was very, very strange. Constant nasal dripping. People told me I looked like death warmed over. My eye area was inflamed. It was very strange. It didn't even feel like other things I had gotten. But they say that this is a lot of, even if people who get it, it isn't everyone who gets, the worst symptoms. Sometimes a lot of people get mild ones, and I think I did get it mildly. Now, it is only blind luck that I didn't end up going to visit my mother and my grandmother at any time during that period. I mean, basically, when you catch this, you're kind of radioactive for, 14 to about 21 days. You could spread it, and especially if you have mild symptoms, and it doesn't seem major.
Miguel, there are some people that have no symptoms.
Right. Yep. And you're still capable of, and my grandmother, she's 87. My mother's 70, and that's what this is all about. This is we're trying to sort of end that chain of transmission for a lot of people, and unfortunately, we have a lot of people who aren't down for that. And I think that, again, I'm not going to get political, but I think that the way that this has been handled, I think that we all need to really, really come to grips that this is going to suck for a long time, regardless of when these lockdowns are and recommendations for, social quarantine, whenever they're lifted. Regardless of that, the reality is this thing is now going to be embedded as a part of life probably for the next few years, and it's going to affect things up and down the chain that, stuff we haven't even considered yet. And as Ed said, best practices, we're all going to have to be more vigilant, and we're all going to have to be more aware, and it sucks. And, I would say prepare for probably some rolling lockdowns across the country. And we won't go back to a nationwide thing, but there probably will be hot spots. And they'll be like, this city, this state has these restrictions placed on it.
I have to say that it's important also to stay hopeful. Already we've seen a lot of bravery. The best and worst. We've seen both the best and worst of what humanity has to offer. Listen, the health workers, they are out there. They're risking their lives, and they're risking.
Shout out to our boy Rich Galato.
Rich Glotto. I have
A friend of ours who we
nurse.
trained martial arts with, who is a nurse in Queens, who actually ended up getting infected. You know, as Ed said, you know, continue. You know, these people on the front lines are. It's hell for them, and it really is hell for them. I mean, anyone who looks at any of like the public accounts that are out there, Twitter feeds, any of these statements, these people are. It's not a good experience. And you know, I was telling Ed the other day, I was reading something about, I believe, a nurse from Kentucky, and she basically wrote this as a thing for the people back home where she was from. She says, you know, they're running out of, you know, they need healthcare workers in New York City, so she comes. She's helping out because she's the only person from the group that she was with that had like ICU experience. She ends up working in the ICUs, and she's, you know, her account is just horrible, talking about people in their 30s, people in their 40s that were there who died, you know, with no comorbidities, nothing, you know, no pre-existing conditions. And, you know, just, you know, the lack of supplies and resources, and the crush on manpowers, and, you know, what this is doing to families. She says, you know, like, and we're, as bad as that was, she says, we're supposedly on a downward trend. And she says, this is coming to your town. This is coming to small town America. This is not just a big city issue. It is going to go through. And we're talking about a lot of these places in America that some of them outside of the big cities do not have a great access to healthcare in those communities. So, you know, this is, you know, absolutely, we should be hopeful. There's gonna, you know, we need more, you know, but that hope has to come with some benchmarks of things. You know, the hope one is that we get more testing,
yep,
which is going to be a huge part for everyone's jobs, and that's going to get like
at-home testing too.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, mm-hmm. Yeah, John, you hit it on the head 100%. This is going to have to be something that is as simple to get as it has to be like a pregnancy test. You have to be able to go down to the local drugstore and be able to go, here's my test. And, you know, there might even be some legal stuff that goes with it. You might, I mean, there might be something you have to mail in as a certification or something. Who knows? Yeah. It's going to suck. It's going to be real inconveniencing. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But so we need testing for tracing, and for individual quarantining to be able to go on with our day-to-day lives. We hope for treatments. You know, something that will make it less of a possibility that, you know, whether it's antivirals or whatever. And, you know, finally, hopefully some kind of vaccine or something. Yeah. But right now it's a part of life, and we just have to be, you know, cognizant of it. It's affecting us all. No one, you know, it's a burden for us. It's a burden, especially for, you know, those who are living paycheck to paycheck. It's a burden right now on, you know, the poor people. It is so far in cities like New York, hammering minority communities.
Places that have a high number of homeless cases. San Francisco is one. Oh my God, places like in Chicago, mm-hmm. where a lot of folk who just don't have a place to go. You know. Mm-hmm. That's a very difficult.
I was going for hopeful, Ed. I was trying to end the segment on hopeful. But now you're like,
I was going to say, hey
man, all the homeless people out there.
On a lighter note,
wait, hold on. You know, are you going to sing Phil Collins' "Another Day in Paradise" for us here, man? Is that what's going to happen?
No, I thought you were going to sing "Something in the Air" tonight.
Anyway, we want to be hopeful that we can get back to normal. Now, what we are going to transition here to is what the show is about, and just, you know, talk about how there is nothing to talk about going forward. Now, of course, that's not going to be forever. Things have been pushed, but, you know, as Ed and I had a whole plan for a James Bond 2-parter episode.
Well,
we were going to cover Bond as a retrospective through the years, all the various Bonds, and then we were going to cover what's the name? I always blank on what the name of this new one is. Die Another Day?
No Time to Die.
Miguel. No Time to Die. Okay, whatever. To which Ed has gone through his whole. He went down a James Bond wormhole for a bit, watching all of those movies. So you're still in your watch. Where are you at?
Okay, so I'm going through 007 fatigue right now because I went through what was available on Prime, on Amazon Prime, starting with Goldfinger, which is the gold standard, right? Pun intended. And I'm just going down a rabbit hole from like the Sean Connery stuff to the Roger Moore stuff, and when it's more, it's more.
Well,
and then
Roger Moore. Wait, don't you mean George Hamilton?
and then I haven't even touched on the Timothy Dalton stuff. And again, stuff I've seen when I was younger.
Yeah, because you've never really considered yourself a big Bond fan. Right?
No.
So
yeah, because like
it's not like even a lot of these are because that you've revisited many times over the years.
But that said, like I've always loved the Daniel Craig stuff, and because of its real world verisimilitude, how do you bring Bond into today's world? And I was looking forward for that stuff, and then push it off.
And that's kind of, we were waiting for that swan song with this film, and then the rug got pulled from under us, and that was the first big cancellation, right?
Yeah, that was the first big cancellation,
and that kind of set the tone. Later on, we were Black Widow was supposed to have been out already, and unfortunately, we're dealing with that as well. So that's been pushed back, which then for a lot of fanboy things, there's a chain reaction because Marvel's
of Batman pushed back too.
Yeah. Right. Yes, exactly. Big things. Marvel was like that. That was there's kind of a domino effect because they like to space out these films in a certain way where there are story elements that will be introduced in one thing and then come to fruition later on. So if you can't do one thing, it halts things further up the line that may not even be out yet, or we're supposed to have, we're finished and we're supposed to be released after this, but you can't release them without having that bit of information from, say, Black Widow, being out there for the public.
For the stuff that you and I watch, I think the biggest one is Wonder Woman. Is that still on?
I think that just as they said, November.
I think for Disney, Shang-Chi, which I believe is still in production. That's being pushed.
Shang-Chi, I'm pretty sure that Eternals is still going to be pushed because, of course, you have the issue with. I believe they finished filming, but
I know that
there's always reshoots. There's always different things, and you can't really right now work is suspended. So like post-production work on it, that's up in the air. That goes for as John pointed out, this DCEU Batman reboot. Where does this stand with the we were Dune was supposed to we were to get at least Dune is one of those things I find interesting because it's like we've been waiting so long for more information on that film. They did finally came out with some pictures just the other day, last week, right? It looks great, but they're gonna not give us that trailer, I don't think.
No.
The trailer has not come out, right? And because of that, for good reason, because they're not going to hype something that they may not be able to show for a year and a half. Whereas before it would have been, closer.
I'm chuckling because aside from Disney has a bunch of projects that they had to just push off. Mulan being a big one.
I was looking forward to Mulan live action.
But you from your childhood, you were a big Mulan fan, John?
Yeah.
The New Mutants,
which that's not even a joke at this point.
Yeah,
Ed,
it is still a joke because
Ed, do you remember that line from The Simpsons? Stop it. He's already dead.
I mean, when from the moment that it was an idea and a concept, and then it's like, okay, they're going to go horror, and this is before.
I have no problem with that, Ed.
This is before Disney bought out Fox, right? And then it's like, okay, New Mutants got another life.
Yeah, it's just wrong place, wrong time on that one. Beyond New Mutants, you've got like what's going to happen with okay, as a big generality, it's gonna seem like, Ed, we're only 4 months into 2020, but it feels like the pre-virus era was like a year and a half ago. It's drawn out, just as everything else is these days, for a variety of reasons. And I wonder, once things start gearing up again, if there will be any changes. For DC stuff, I just want to say it's going to seem like forever since something had come out. Because even though Birds of Prey was recently, and it was a bit of a flop. Which I don't think it was a gigantic flop, but I think it was like, it didn't do great. I don't think that's in the mind. As a matter of fact, I think it kind of came and went. And so I think in a lot of people's minds, I think the last DC movie was Aquaman, which feels
big.
Or Shazam, or was it Shazam?
Shazam.
Which also, by the way, made its money, but wasn't a gigantic $1 billion hit.
Even though, and it shows you how these movies are sort of having that effect on us. Shazam feels like 5 years ago.
Feels forever ago. This is what I'm saying.
What was it? A year ago was I think Endgame. You watch it, and that's funny. I forget there's something that came out a year ago, and it's like, wow, that was just a year ago. These things felt like, like
think about Star Wars projects.
Oh,
what John?
No, sorry. You talked about Shazam, and I pulled up the numbers. It didn't do good at all. The budget was $100 million, and it made 53 on the opening, and worldwide gross is 365 million.
Yeah. It did good in the sense that it covered its budget well.
Yeah,
but it wasn't some kind of
it wasn't a hit,
a runaway hit.
Yeah.
And getting back to what I was saying about Star Wars, when is the next Star Wars project thing going to be out? Well, Clone Wars is currently available. You can still watch Mandalorian season 1, but season 2 of Mandalorian has been halted. When does that finish up? And that's an expensive and very post-production heavy kind of show. I'm wondering how I really am wondering how this is going to affect all of these sorts. Ed, do you think that this will mean, again, you were all about hope. Is this possible that this lights a fire under certain franchise asses?
Well, let's
your continual lament is that Warner Brothers is not doing. DC.
Well,
so does this once we are able to get back to work, will they be like, GL, green light that, Flash, green light that, let's get these things moving?
Miguel, the most simplest way I can really
here we go
is that now, for those of you who are not talk show nuts, Miguel and I are, and Conan O'Brien and Stephen Colbert, given that they are friends and they're buddies, they decided to do a promotion of their episodes. And one of the things that they sort of discussed was, hey, Stephen, do you think this is going to change? And I'm paraphrasing here. Do you think this is going to change how
we do business?
Or how we do business? And Stephen's like, there's no doubt in my mind that some executive is looking at this and saying, hey, why does Stephen need the theater? This is definitely going to change the outlook of
but in terms of how does how does that affect, do you think, the question I asked you, which was, will this light a fire under some of these franchises? Will there be things that maybe weren't getting greenlit, and just beyond? Let's forget about even just narrowing it down to superhero stuff, and especially Warner Brothers. Just there will be this sort of we need to put things out. We need to get content. We need to get people back into theaters, because even if this is part of some sort of long-term changeover from theaters to home, say, theaters are not going to collapse in 2 years. They're going to try and save them.
Right. I think with the Birds of Prey, I read somewhere that and when was it? I forget when it was released, but they even considered, hey, you know what? Let's release this for home audiences, because we need to make up the difference, and as far as a box office and ticket sales.
Are you talking about Birds of Prey?
For Birds of Prey. And yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that because listen, there are winners and losers in this pandemic. Streaming services are up, right? And that's what everyone's doing at home. We gotta get our entertainment somehow, and internet. Everyone's on the internet, because without internet in this crisis, I think we'd all be killing each other.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Certain delivery service. I mean, again, there's an array of services, industries that are just reinvigorated.
Zoom, for example, the platform we're using, that thing blew up overnight because of the pandemic.
We are in Zoom right now.
John, are you suggesting that it's the Zoom people that are behind the coronavirus? I believe that's what you're saying. And John, I think that's a disgusting slur. I think you should take it back.
We need to raise profits at all costs.
But that comes along with other things attached.
Wait, hold on. So, John, in other words, you're saying there was like a darkened room, and the CEO of Zoom makes that like that's what we got to do. And you're saying that there should at least be like one, like Jeff Goldblum there going like, you thought so long about whether or not you could do something. You didn't think about whether or not you should. Now you're patenting it and you're selling it. You're selling it. Which you call capitalism, I call the rape of the natural world.
Well, like what we're doing here, like
bravo.
This whole video conference and video streaming services, which is sort of kind of exploded, and then counter arguments to it is like, oh my God, Zoom has a security issue. Let's go on Facebook Live. Oh no, let's go on. Let's see what FaceTime has to offer.
Well, Ed, your story the other day, of course, was of. We got into a discussion, but we're not going to get into the full ins and outs of it. But of course, you're talking about like religion and funeral arrangements and things like that, where suddenly people have to, and this goes to a further question. Like I said, this is affecting real life. I wonder how this affects how storytelling in films and TV is going to be. Will the big franchises choose to give people a happy space away from this all? Or will they be like, we have to engage with this reality that's in the world? Will we see people with okay, and to dovetail this right into superhero stuff, will we see people in more films, more mainstream stuff, having to wear masks and see that the virus awareness is part of their everyday lives? And more importantly, if now that everyone in the world is wearing masks, will that mean that Marvel heroes and DC heroes will finally actually wear their iconic masks all throughout a movie? Because, hey, if everyone else is wearing masks, like Wesley said as the Dread Pirate Roberts in The Princess Bride, they're incredibly comfortable. I think everyone will be wearing them in the future.
So one thing that I brought up to Miguel is that, so if you're not a Psych fan,
okay,
Psych the TV show, Miguel and I, we sort of kind of brainstormed an episode where, because it's Psych 2, the second movie is going to be coming out soon, where Sean and Gus solve their mysteries over this. It's like, no.
Oh, Sean, yeah, no. Someone needs to write that. And Psych would be the perfect ability. It would be, they're all doing on a Zoom call, and they can't, it's like, well, because of this, we can't, be out there, blah, blah, blah. Somehow they all, like, you make it, they all got infected or whatever, right? And so some of them are sick, some of them are sniffling, whatever. And like somehow Sean figures out the crime, but what we and Ed were all on about, we were like, yeah, he figures out the crime, but somehow he turns Gus into his leg man.
It's like, no, Sean, you understand. Like, Gus, just show me the murder.
Take your iPhone and get. I need a close up on that thing. Sean, I'm very uncomfortable right now. Sean, I ran out of Lysol 3 days ago. But I do wonder how is that going to be integrated in any way? John, what do you think? Do you think that because remember after 9/11, John, there was that sort of like retroactive, we want to get rid of, all imagery of the Twin Towers and stuff. Do you think that that's something we'll see here with the virus, or do you think that they'll go like, no, this is a reality and we have to deal with it?
I think they should remove that imagery because there's a lot of people that suffered from this, and now everyone knows someone. It used to be, that's over there, or I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy, but now it's like everyone's one person removed from this, and I feel like it would just be very upsetting and a little too soon to kind of have that portrayed in art and comedy and action. I think so.
Okay. See, that I find that interesting because, like, when you look back at our entertainment, I think that this is a question to be asked because, during the Great Depression, one of the greatest, money makers for movies was a lot of stuff that was the reason musicals blew up was because people wanted that escape. They wanted to be away from the realities of, breadlines and drudgery.
Away from the reality.
So therefore there were these movies about rich people dancing. I mean, that's Fred Astaire. That's kind of what he made his bones on. At the same time, during that period, you also had stuff like Grapes of Wrath being made. Some of the great stories that were dealing with the poverty at the time that came out during that period as well. And Grapes of Wrath was a hit. It was a hit as a book, and then it became a hit as a film. And so, I mean, there's two sides to that argument. I mean, definitely people are going to want to get away. At the same time, it's going to be very odd, in my opinion, to see a movie where they're not, if it has no reflection of reality.
But that said, I think, listen, let's say that vaccine comes out tomorrow, that uptick is going to be like, we're out. It's going to be.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ed,
outside, that's what's going to happen.
Ed, this has stolen so many holidays.
Yeah.
That people are going to want to combine them with, in the future, there'll be like a Corona day. Corona will take it, and then Corona, the beer company, will take advantage of that. And they'll try. You laugh. My mom, when I was a kid, she used to always say, things were so much more sacred when I was a child. And, I look around, it's like, and this wasn't that long ago. We're talking, the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And Mom would say, you'd go around and something like a Lincoln's Day, President's Day, George Washington's birthday, Lincoln's birthday, those sort. They were commemorative and they were solemn. And now they're just all sales, right? Mm-hmm. Like there are sales. Like think about this. President Lincoln was shot. He's an assassinated president. And his imagery is used in things like car commercials or electronic sales commercials or, so on and so forth. And it's like, no, isn't that like a terrible tragedy from our country's history? And so like, if they did that, dude, they're gonna
tragedy
it's gonna be Corona Day. I'm just saying.
Plus time is comedy.
Now,
there you go.
I know that you have very limited knowledge on Star Trek, but on DS9, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, there was something called the Bell Riots.
Oh God, Ed!
Where the Bell Riots are pretty much they occur it's somewhere in a very near future from where we are.
Something vague from the 21st century ish. Now, Ed, I can already tell he's looking up, but yeah, that was the whole John. The whole idea of Trek is our history is very, very different from the history because, of course, Trek originates from the 60s and everything that they said then is canon. And therefore, like they talk about Khan being a eugenics war in the 90s, but then there's supposed to be a nuclear war as well. Oh, no, Ed, what do you got for me?
Okay, so Jonathan, just for you, the Bell riots were a pivotal series of events on Earth that took place September 2024.
Wow.
Started in San Francisco Sanctuary District A, and they were named after the protest leader Gabriel Bell. And it is a very violent civil disturbances in American history, where the riots and subsequent crackdowns resulted in deaths at 100 of Sanctuary District residents. I'm not going to go through the rest, but basically, Jonathan, it was basically the masses versus the 1%ers, right? And
this was an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine that was very much showing the left of center politics of Star Trek on its shoulder, on its sleeve. Really, we're wearing it on its sleeve, and it's basically, hey, don't. And it's funny because this was post the Gingrich Revolution in the 90s. It was basically the Star Trek writers, hey, don't cut the social safety net. And that's really, really, really important. We're not going to get into the wherefores of the episode, but
John was fated to be Gabriel Bell.
But
Yes.
I wonder, and one of the big things about that episode was, of course, like you said, the reinstitution of unemployment insurance. It was like looking back, it's like Star Trek, space action. But first, we really want to talk about unemployment insurance and how one can. That's basically what the whole episode. That it was a two-parter. It was a two-parter about unemployment insurance. Ed.
Yes.
How times have changed.
How times have changed, and well, listen, I feel that while you did start off by saying that, hey, we have a show about nothing. I disagree, Miguel. We have a show that we can talk a lot about nothing, and nothing being Star Trek futures, eugenic wars.
Hey, Ed, when are we going to have that special on that episode of Star Trek that was the backdoor pilot assignment? Or I think we could get about at least 3 or 4 episodes out of that. I would watch that show. As a matter of fact, here's the truth. The truth is, I've always loved that episode. This is just a little side. I've always loved that episode. I love the concept. I love Terry Garr, who was the young ditzy girl in the episode who was supposed to be like sort of the sidekick, because it was a backdoor pilot for what I think kind of amounts to Gene Roddenberry's take on Doctor Who. Ed, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that episode, Gary 7 isn't basically Doctor Who.
You are absolutely right. Unfortunately, it just didn't pan out that way because, it's like...
that you say that. But I would have to know that Gary 7 got his own series of books.
Oh, really? Did he?
And Ed, they tie it all in. It's crazy. I went down a rabbit hole once. They continue from where they left off in that Trek episode.
Yeah.
And then they include Gary 7's first enemy. And his enemy, guess who? There she.
Really?
There she is.
Okay.
And they basically say Gary 7, during his period, during the eugenics wars, was one of the biggest thorn in Khan's side.
Right.
And that they were they were mirrored because Gary 7's whole thing was he was genetically engineered by aliens. Khan was a genetically engineered human being as well from human scientists. And it was a whole thing that went on there. And Ed, by the way, the guy who wrote those novels apparently tied it all into a whole bunch of other like Paramount-owned franchises. Oh, this gets good, Ed. This gets good. You see, do you remember Beauty and the Beast with Ron Perlman and Linda Hamilton from the 80s?
Right.
And I don't know how much you remember on the show. On that show, you had Ron Perlman playing the Beast. And then you, of course, had a character he called Father, who was supposed to be like, the Beast character, Vincent, was a genetically engineered creation. Well, guess what, Ed? He ties in that series with the other show, The Pretender, which was also about a dude who was genetically engineered. And he makes it, and he like ties into this whole tab. So like, this is the story of how Khan came to power, how he was defeated. It included, all of these other stuff. That's how it built up to it. Craziness, crazy. So that's a little tangent on that. And again, I would watch that.
And at the end of it, we find out everything exists in the head of an autistic boy from St. Elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's like right now we're in the some weird matrix right now.
Yeah, well, Ed, whoever's paying the reality writers, they need to, I don't know.
Reality writers. Hold on. Let me write that down.
Yeah, John, tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, to keep with the theme of the show. It's like anything you've written for the last 20 years keeps seeming more and more absurd because every twist and turn of history seems to be, we go like, that couldn't happen. And then, nope, it happens. And here we are now with maybe the lowest point, and like at this point in time, if the aliens show up, will any of us blink an eye? Will any of us blink an eye if it's just like, and oh, by the way, fleet of alien spaceships have shown up?
Well, we did have Easter. Easter was 2 weeks ago. And I maybe from a certain perspective, Miguel, and I did mention your name, Miguel, that guy comes here, and some people didn't like what he said, and decided to kill him, and he wakes up 3 days later and says, "I've got to go back to my planet now."
I would just remind anyone who's listening that Ed is the born-again Christian of the group. Though Jonathan, I suppose, also is, but Ed is always, and yet that's the joke he goes to. That's in his bag of tricks. That's his reference point.
Coochie is from another planet.
But we all have what we are all hoping right now is that we can get back to some kind of normalcy. We want to get back to some kind of normalcy. We are going back and forth with each other of how we can continue doing this under these circumstances. We're using the Zoom format, and if nothing new is coming out, there are some still smaller projects. Netflix, Hulu, we have a Picard follow-up show. We are going to get to that review. We'll probably, during the next couple of weeks or months, we'll probably finally get around to doing that Farscape episode. And among other things.
I want to, we're going to do that Farscape episode. I know that I've been very eager to...
We're not going to get into it, Ed. We're not going to get into it, but we will reveal that Dargo is Jewish.
Right.
And
I'm very eager.
We're going to be doing probably more retrospective, more looking at the past stuff. We're not going to get around to Mandalorian season 2 or other things that have been pushed back, but we will be continuing to do this.
And I know that some of our friends, like Jeremy and Anna, they've been very eager. Well, Anna has been very eager to want to participate. And she's dealing things from France, right?
Right.
The boonies out in France. And Jeremy, I know that he's been, I'm pretty sure that he's been busy also. So, in the very foreseeable future, we'll have them on and have
we want to continue, as we all will be easing back into normalcy. This is too big a part of our lives for us to let go, and we're happy for anyone who enjoys spending time with us and listening to our, us with the mouth diarrhea about the fanboy stuff. And we thank you, and we hope that you out there are staying safe and sane and taking all the right precautions and looking out for each other and helping each other where is necessary. And we will be back, and we thank you for your time. Please stay safe. And until next time,
to be continued.
Play me my theme song.
Wait. Executive producer freeze.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Be Continued, a Fanboy podcast. Our website is www.tobecontinued.a-fanboy-podcast. Check us out on iTunes, Google Play, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.